Welcome to Issues That Matter. I'm Cynthia Pula. My guest today is David Serpa, and David is a congressional candidate in the state of California, and we're going to talk about the migrant crisis. So, David, how's the campaign going?
Good to see you, Cynthia. The campaign is great. We are all exhausted, which is what you should be when there's less than 70 days in an election cycle. But 2 and 3 events a day, every day, between now and election day, and we're firing on all cylinders, trying to get this thing locked up.
That's great. Now, what made you decide to run for Congress?
Well, the short answer is I am, a combat veteran. I went to Afghanistan, and I'm a machine gunner, and I want to see an end to these wars. I don't want to send our children off to fight in these wars. They're not buying it. They don't believe in it. They understand that at this point, it is the military industrial complex that is being propped up. It's not our country that is benefiting from these wars. It's these multinational oligarchs. And so at this point, I see the system. I'm designed to fight it. Why not me? Why not now? I feel like the demons that you do not fight, you pass along to your children. And we've been far too comfortable passing along demons to our children.
I was talking to a friend just before I came on with you, and I said the line in the sand is 1945. Before 1945, there were skirmishes ever since mankind first, came into being. But 1945 was the year that the United States um created something that could exterminate this whole planet. So to me, it's very frightening.
And of course, you're talking about the atomic bomb,
Of
correct?
course.
Yeah, and the thing is we are playing with violence as a culture that does not intimately understand violence. And so I think that we need people in places of legislation who understand violence so that we feel less comfortable legislating it to other people, because ultimately that violence comes home. And we are playing with far too many nuclear powers
Yep.
that can reach out and touch us. And
Mhm.
this is a dangerous game, especially when, Vice President Harris has had her financial policy written by BlackRock, which is the company that benefits financially when we go to war, benefits in the destruction of other countries, and then benefits financially in the rebuilding of other countries, plus gets ownership. So I'm tired of acting like these things don't exist that
Mhm.
were pointed out to us by General Smedley Butler, when he talked about war as a racket almost 100 years ago. General Eisenhower, when he warned us about the military industrial
Right.
complex. These things have not changed.
Mhm.
We have been divided and conquered and colonized. And that's true right here in America. We have to look to who our colonizers are, to, see who they are overseas, because it's the same companies that are controlling our natural resources, that are controlling our foreign policy, that are controlling our education and our healthcare and our media. And
Mhm.
that's what happens when you're a conquered and colonized country.
So as you go around campaigning, you witness the fact that there's a migrant crisis in your district. How
Mhm.
bad is it? What's it
Well,
like?
yeah, well, the thing is, in California, it's a sanctuary state.
Correct.
And we have a governor that is not leading in the protection of our country. And you don't have a country if you can't defend it. And defense starts at the border. But we keep overextending our hand and our tentacles into other countries. But that's the governor's job, is to protect this country at the border. And so we don't have an Abbott that's protecting us. In fact, we have a lot of sanctuary states that are making things much worse. And, I have an opponent, Congressman Mark Takano, who's 6 terms in at this point, and he voted no on HR 2, which is the Secure Our Border Act of 2023. He voted no on the Laken Riley Act. He voted no on the Kate Steinle Act. He voted against the impeachment of Mayorkas. And he also voted against prohibiting illegal immigrants from voting in elections in Washington, D.C. And so he's gone so far to the left that he's really alienated himself, even in a very democratic district that we live in. And I think that as long as people wake up in the next, less than 70 days, we've got a shot to hopefully put a dent in it and start drawing that line in the sand that you were referring to.
Now, I've been in talking to Jonathan Alexander, who's right on the border, and he talks about what's happening, with the migrants coming in. And he said that there's a very severe fentanyl problem, and the fentanyl is being shipped all over the country. Is fentanyl bad in your district?
Fentanyl is bad everywhere. At this point, we're losing over 100,000 people a year in this country to fentanyl overdoses. It is the number one killer of men in my age group, 18 to 45. And I was out door knocking in just one community in Orange Crest, which is in Riverside. And I met two different mothers who lost their adult children to fentanyl. And right there at their door. And they talked to me about it. And both of them gave me some things to carry with me. And they're looking at it and they understand that we have been infiltrated, and that the same country that is infiltrating us with fentanyl, and that is leading to these fentanyl overdoses, is doing it illegally that way, but they're also doing it legally by controlling 90% of our pharmaceuticals. So people don't understand that 90% of our pharmaceuticals are manufactured in China, and then we import them into the United States of America. And we saw a little bit of that when supply chains were shut down. But, Jonathan Alexander is a great guy. He highlights a lot of this. We are a very vulnerable country with the amount of 20 million plus people that have come into this country illegally. They've brought in things like fentanyl, and enough fentanyl to kill the entire population 20 times over. And, our water systems are vulnerable. Our people are vulnerable. And it's not like it's something that might happen. Like I said, it's already the number one killer of men in my age group. And we were losing over 100,000 people a year to fentanyl. And we're still acting like it's not a problem. And I'll wrap with this. Governor Newsom has not met with our 58 elected sheriffs, not even one time since he was elected as a governor. Now, every single governor before him in the state of California met with the 58 elected sheriffs of the state of California quarterly, 4 times a year. And Governor Newsom hasn't done it once. So, we have Prop 47, which has destroyed our state. Governor Newsom has destroyed our state. And there's a lot of people that criticize me and they're like, why don't you just leave? And it's like, well, when you're being colonized, if you continue to cede territory, eventually that colonizer doesn't stop. He continues to go and find you wherever it is that you're hiding.
I was talking to a friend of mine about the fentanyl crisis just yesterday, and he agrees that it's coming from China. But he also said that he thinks it's retribution to the United States for the opium wars. What do you think?
China has a long memory. And the thing that we don't understand is that they will wait for a long time for retribution, and they will, eventually they'll seek it out. So I don't underestimate anything. There's enough things that are being done in the light that we can question them for, and like the fact that they've stopped exporting lithium to the United States because they don't want us to be able to manufacture anymore. That's an intelligent thing that they're doing. The fact that they're building their own Silicon Valley, which a lot of our own billionaires are invested in, and they're manufacturing cars and chips and things like that. And so the United States doesn't play the long-term game that we should be playing, that China has been playing, which is why, China now controls Bagram, Air Force Base, which we left behind in Afghanistan, and a lot of the military equipment that we left behind in Afghanistan. They're playing a long game, and they brought a lot of that equipment back, and they're taking it apart and figuring out how it works. And the world is a less safe place with President Biden at the helm, which leads to things like us being taken advantage of by China. If the Chinese see that we're weak, they're not going to have sympathy for us. You know, when have we ever had sympathy for China?
Mhm.
So, we need to have better trade relationships in general, but those trade relationships can't be based on free trade. It's got to be based on fair trade. We can't continue to export our middle class while we import cheap goods.
Jonathan had mentioned there are people from all over the world coming into the United States illegally. When you look at your district, do you see a cross section of people from all over the world coming in to California?
Yes, but in a beautiful way. Like in my district is a melting pot in Riverside, and I was with the Shri Mandir Foundation a couple of nights ago, which is a lot of our Hindu brothers and sisters. I've met with some of our Sikh community, the Muslim community, the Jewish community, and so we have a wide range of people that come from all over the world and settle in Riverside. And I don't necessarily find myself looking at anybody sideways, because that's just kind of always been the way that this district has been. I think that there's an easy solution to some of this stuff, which of course comes in two different ways. The first is securing the border at the border. That's the most important one. And then the second is Congressman Calvert, who is running in the adjacent district to my own, developed a system called E-Verify. I think, back in the 1990s, maybe. It's been around for a long time, maybe the 2000s. And what it does is it makes sure that the person that you are hiring is using, a valid social security number, a valid ID, and that they are registered and allowed to work here in California. Because if we don't hire people that aren't supposed to be here, if they legally cannot work, then they will go home.
Hmm. So he was saying also that um w with driver's license, that people come into this country, they get a driver's license and then automatically get a voter registration form. So if they're
Correct.
not citizens, how could they vote? What's going on there? And if so, then there might be millions of people across the country with voter registration forms that are not citizens that will vote in November. What do you
Well,
say to
Cynthia,
that?
you got to be careful asking these kind of questions, because giving the kind of answers that I'm going to give is going to get your video taken down and shadow banned, and you're going to get less views because of it. But
But
here
the
we
thing
are.
is, if I get less views, okay, but at least I'm getting relevant information out.
So what you need to do is, and right now is the time to do it, is you need to go down to your local registrar of voters office, and if you're in the state of California, and you need to pull the list of ballots that can be challenged. Because in my district alone, there were over 8,000 ballots that can 8,000 registrations that can be challenged for various reasons. And so, we have different people that are going through and figuring out whether or not they live in the district still. And what they're finding is they're finding PO box that is registered to one area, which is registered to another area, which is in, Maine, or which is in Washington, D.C. And so they're challenging the ones that don't have an address where they're actually registered to vote, and they're finding a lot of it. Or they're finding people that are passed away, people that have died. They're finding and it's hard to look at a name and to look at an address and to be able to challenge everything. But there are 8,000 ballots, like I said, in my district that the registrar of voters office have basically said, hey, these are the ones that can be challenged.
So, if if the present administration wins again, what do you see happening?
So I think that there will be geez, that's a question that I don't really like to think about a whole heck of a lot. I do see a strong possibility that President Trump wins, that we pick up seats in the House and the Senate, and that I personally don't win because I have such a heavily Democratic district. But if President Trump does not win, um, geez, I honestly am a little bit nervous about it because they've stoked the fires so much on both sides with the rhetoric, that people are no longer thinking about revolution. They're thinking about civil war. They're talking about fighting each other, left versus right, street to street, you know what I mean? Instead of fighting the system that is controlling us. And that's ultimately where we need to fight. Like I say, and it's on my sign, it's not left versus right, it's time to unite. People are starting to catch on, the 80 to 90% of us in the middle, that the system is what does not serve us. Now, with President Trump assembling this team with RFK Jr. and Vivek Ramaswamy and Tulsi Gabbard and JD Vance and Elon Musk, it's a very exciting thing. Now, what happens if he doesn't win? Honestly, Cynthia, I'm so nervous about it. I don't like to think about it, but that's why I'm out trying to really advocate for love and trying to advocate for unity. Because you know, things are so divisive at this point that I do worry that there would be violence.
So do you think all the strife we've got in this country, do you think it's all by design?
Mhm.
You
Yeah,
do,
well, I absolutely do, because you look at the regions that they try to control and conquer first. So California is the breadbasket of America, and they've dried us up by design. Iran is the breadbasket of the Middle East, and they've gone after Iran. Yes, it's about the oil, but it's also about the food. You look at Ukraine. Ukraine is the breadbasket of Europe, and
right.
they are going after Ukraine. You look at India. India is a self-sustaining country with so much food and individual farmers that they started attacking India 10 years ago, which is why India farmers have been taking their own lives at a rate of over 10,000 a year every year. So over 110,000 farmers have taken their own lives in India. And it's because we're passing the sort of restrictions in here in California that were passed in India 10 years ago, laws that have to do with the soil and the amount of oil that in the petroleum that's in the soil, laws that have to do with water that deny water to the regions that need water, of course, drying us up. Water is a way to control us. We could talk about that in a moment. And then, of course, they're by outlawing things like the internal combustion engine. Farms, I'm from a lot of rural California. I've been all over the place. And I can tell you, farms don't run on extension cords. They run on gasoline. Everything is powered by a small internal combustion engine or a large one. And they want to make that illegal by 2030. And so ultimately, what does that do? Is it pushes out small family farms, small ag, and it consolidates power into that monopoly, which is big ag, big agriculture, which is, controls our food through the FDA, and they're making it very difficult for us to be able to feed ourselves in the event that there was some sort of global issue.
Mm. So what ultimately down the road, what do you envision politically?
Yeah, so I think that there needs to be a sort of a radicalization of your average, person to realize that we have, like I said, have been conquered and colonized, and that requires a response. We talk about running America like a business. Well, if America is a business and a corporation, which it is, then good businesses take care of their people, yes, but good businesses also have a product. And what we have been doing is we have been giving our product away for pennies on the dollar to companies like Berkshire Hathaway. or Nestle and for the water, or Chevron. So we have these oil contracts and these water contracts and lithium and uranium, and what we're doing is we're giving it away. These are natural resources. If anything, big business should not be involved in that, because we have to subsidize big business in order for them to even attain these contracts. So the people pay to subsidize. And then when there's a failure on companies like Edison or PG&E or a lot of our electrical companies, we get charged more as they're shutting down our nuclear plants, San Onofre, Diablo Canyon. And then they say, oh, well, we don't have power. So now you have to pay for solar, which is inefficient and inadequate and doesn't store. And then they charge us again when these companies fail to provide the basic service and end up burning down our forest through things like the mosquito fire. And you have PG&E completely failing the people, and then we pay to bail them out. And so I'm tired of playing the game. America, if it's going to be run like a business, should be involved in lithium extraction, uranium extraction, making the water flow, involved in oil and in coal. And if we're really going to untap the American potential and the American economy, have a shining city on a hill where the lights are on and there's water in the tap. And if we want to become energy dominant and become an exporter, we have to get out of the way and make it so that government does what it should be doing all along: energy, water, defense.
I'm gonna uh, go off track a little bit because I have a friend in New York who's definitely running for United States Senate, and she's in a real uphill battle. And from the way you talk, you're in an uphill battle also. With the problems in this country, do you think that running for office, maybe winning, becoming part of that group who doesn't want any change, is it worth your time and energy?
And well, then what would that be? That would be violence. Well, if we're past the point of, participating because it's so corrupt, then we just say, oh, well, then, violence. That's what's going to happen. I don't want to do that. I can work my tail off and try to leave, $1 million for my kids and, leave them each a house in a broken state, in a broken country. I talk to people all the time, like, you got to run for office. You got to do it. And they say, oh, well, maybe when my kids are good, when they're taken care of. I'm like, no, listen, nobody's kids are going to be good. No one's going to be okay. It's on us to preserve our republic. And so we need to have more people that are passionate about it, because right now, look, I don't know if I'm going to win in November. The cards are stacked heavily against me, but I feel called to run. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to run. I don't know what's next. A lot of people have been asking me, hey, do you know what you're going to do if you don't end up getting elected on November 5th? No, that's not even for me to determine right now. So yes, 100% worth my time. Maybe I inspire a couple people to run in the next one that end up getting kind of radical. So, because if I get elected, I'm going to create a ruckus. I'm going to bring the people with me. I'm going to put the system on their heels. I'm going to work to unite everyone that's worth uniting. And I'm going to highlight some of these inadequacies and the dysfunction and the corruption. And they're probably going to do everything that they can, if I'm able to sneak in this time, to make sure that they bury me in the next one. And that's fine. If I only get 2 years out of it, wouldn't that be beautiful? 2 years out of it would be beautiful. But I'm doing everything that I can to get that 2 years.
So how did you meet Jonathan?
I met Jonathan. So my campaign was putting together a birthday event for me, and I had gotten his contact information through some mutual friends that book a lot of different podcasts and whatnot, and have helped me out a lot with my campaign. You know, Tina gave me his number, and she said, "Hey, you've got to call this guy. He'd probably come out." And so came out. He didn't charge me a dime. Came out, spoke at my birthday event, and he brought evidence and he brought receipts and he showed people all these live videos that he had done from the border. You know, he said, I mean, the guy sold his house, moved down to the border, and he is put his name on it. He's fighting it full time, and he's seeing firsthand that drug trafficking leads to human trafficking and all of the terrible things that go along with that. And it's a terrible thing that we've done where we've just allowed this country to have open borders. We cut holes in fences, and he's like, hey, you've got to come down here and I'll show you where all the holes in the fences are. I'll show you where they're letting them through, the way that they're coordinating it. And it's just, so anyone who hasn't checked out Jonathan Alexander, he's just alive and he's down there and he's still kicking.
I respect what he's doing. I think
Yeah.
I respect what you're doing.
Thank you.
So in the final moments, why don't you give your contact information if somebody wants to become part of your campaign, whether it's money, whether it's manpower, how could they reach you?
I appreciate you asking. So it's David Serpa, SERPA, for Congress.com. And we update our weekly schedule every Monday on the website. You can see where we are going to be, what we are going to be doing all week. We have all of our events up there. We also have a donation link. And then I have links to lots of interviews, speeches, my social media. So it's not a typical campaign where we're not trying to say anything in order to get elected. I'm saying everything that's on my mind, including the book. It's not behind me right now, but Common Sense for California. If you want to take a look at that book, I outlined over 900 pages of common sense for California because common sense is not so common. And if you want to join us out and be a volunteer, we're door knocking. We're holding, corner rallies and events every single day between now and election day. And I'd love to see you in the trenches.
Great, thank you. And I'd like to stay in touch with you. I think you're doing a great job. So
Thank you so much.
you've been listening to David Serpa. And what district are you in?
I'm running in the 39th district, which is Riverside, Paris, Harupa Valley, Moreno Valley, and Meade Valley. It's all in Riverside County. And it's against Congressman Takano, who was, made famous in the What is a Woman documentary. He said that Mike Tyson should be able to fight women if he were to identify as a woman. He spoke out against Parents' Bill of Rights on the floor. And he has a pretty atrocious voting record, voting against Parents' Bill of Rights, writing a letter to the Department of Defense to write a Parents' Bill of Rights out of all public schools ran by the Department of Defense. So he's a very radical guy, and I'm doing everything that I can to highlight his voting record for people.
So David, I'll be in touch with you again. Good luck. I think you're doing a great job. You've been listening to David Serpa. I'm Cynthia Pooler. This is Issues That Matter. And if you like this video, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. David, thank you. We'll talk again. And thank you, everybody, for listening. Have a wonderful day.